First of all, I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of my many friends, also to my many enemies. Once again, this is another episode of Roosevelt Sounds Off. And I'd like to first of all thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everybody for rating, commenting, and subscribing. You are helping to make it all happen. It's a beautiful thing, and it's highly, highly appreciated from my heart to yours. Okay, so on today's video, we got a couple of stories that we're going to get into. First, I was going to do separate videos on both of these stories, but since it's kind of relating to the same thing, I decided to go on and do these two stories together. And you see the title. We want to talk today about disorder in the church. I'll say that again. Disorder in the church. Now, it's been several things to come up this year. Especially with what happened earlier this year. Matter of fact, the story, when I did the video on this particular story of what happened in the Potter's House Church of Fort Worth, Texas, that video of mine did go viral, along with everybody else, about how a young lady named Audrey Stevenson was attacked by security at the Potter's House Church of Fort Worth, which is a church that is under the leadership of Bishop T.D. Jakes. But now we have two different situations. The first situation I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to play a news clip for in a few minutes, is a situation that took place in the Maryland area in a Catholic church, St. Mary's Catholic Church, where a priest named Michael Breezy acted so disrespectfully to a dead woman's family. And only, you know what this is all about, why he acted so out of order? Because I guess there was a whole lot of people at this particular funeral, and I guess somebody got a little bit too close to the altar and it was an accident, knocked over a communion chalice, and I guess it broke. And this is just when he went nuts. Getting all bent out of shape, all over just a inanimate object, just a thing. When, first of all, if anybody knows the Bible or knows Scripture, no, I don't think that things can necessarily be sacred, because it says in the Scripture that God doesn't dwell in the things that are made with man's hands. So how could this holy, so-called, I'm going to say, holy cup or chalice be so sacred that this priest acts so disrespectfully like he did in this case? So right now, I'm about to cut to the news clip and let you all see exactly what happened. Stay tuned for the clip.
At Agnes Hicks's obituary, this was for her viewing and funeral that was held here inside this church Tuesday morning. Hundreds of people showed up to pay their respects, but it all ended abruptly when someone knocked over and damaged the church's sacred cup, also known as a chalice. A cell phone records a chaotic scene from the church pews as an argument between the pastor and family laying their loved one to rest escalates, while the body of 54-year-old Agnes Hicks lays in her casket right nearby. A short time later, the family is seen carrying out her casket to leave, with shocked attendees and police cars in the parking lot.
This was uncalled for, uncalled for at that church, and it really hurt me, really do. To see your loved one come there to rest and be shut down like that.
Hicks's family is still traumatized over what happened. They say Agnes Hicks was baptized as a young girl at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Charlotte Hall, and it's where she had always wanted her funeral. But things got ugly at her viewing with Pastor Michael Breezy. This is a photo of him from the church's website, when family says someone went in for a hug and accidentally knocked over the church's sacred chalice near the altar.
That's when all hell broke loose. He literally got on the mic and said there will be no funeral, there will be no mass, no repast. Everyone get the hell out of my church. He was disrespectful. He disrespected our family. He disrespected my mother. He called my mother a thing. He said, get this thing out of my church. Everyone get the hell out of my church. It was very sad. It was very sad. And I never seen anything like that before.
Family says the pastor then called police.
Bad enough we had to bury our own mother yesterday. But for you to say she's a thing and it will be no funeral, you're not a preacher. You're not a pastor. You're not a father of the Lord. You're not none of that. Acting like that, you're the devil.
When officers arrived, they determined the family was not in the wrong and escorted them to a funeral home out of the county, where another pastor performed their funeral service. Meanwhile, the Archdiocese of Washington has issued an apology to the family that reads in part, quote, "What occurred at St. Mary's Parish does not reflect the Catholic Church's fundamental calling to respect, nor does that incident represent the pastoral approach the priests of the Archdiocese of Washington commit to undertake every day in their ministry."
My mom was supposed to have a great funeral, and all this came up, and now I'm so traumatized about it. I'm gonna keep thinking about this every day. Like, I can't never forget this day.
The Archdiocese adds that they are taking this matter very seriously and it is still under review. Father Breezy is also expected to make a formal apology to the family.
Okay, you all just saw that clip, that news clip of what happened in this case at the St. Mary's Church. And that falls under the category of fair use, by the way. Okay, let's get more into this story, at least like one of the little stories that we're going to be talking about on today's episode. Where you see that they were looking to lay their mother to rest. And this pastor, I think, was just so disrespectful to this family, all because a so-called communion chalice got knocked over. Boo-hoo! Come on, get over it. I mean, anytime, you're a pastor or a priest or whatever you call yourself, and you put value of things and property above people, then I think that's a sad state of affairs that we are living in whenever we can't even turn to our own churches in our time of need and comfort. And it was really disrespectful when he pointed down at their mother in a coffin and said, "Get this thing out of my church. All of you all, get the hell out of my church." Another YouTuber said it, but I'm going to say it also too. I think if that would have happened with one of my family members, I don't think there would have been any more episodes of Roosevelt Sounds Off. Because that might have very well been my very last day as a free member of society. Maybe there might have been a Roosevelt Sounds Off in like 20, 25, 30 years from now. Because I think I've actually would have killed this man. And if you see the picture of this man, I mean, he's getting so upset about a chalice, but yet I'm just wondering, have him and other priests been upset about the issue of child molestation that has taken place within the Catholic Church? I mean, how come him and other priests are not promoting this same passion that they have when a communion chalice gets knocked over to what is going on with children and what has happened with abuse of children by priests within the Catholic Church? Because quite frankly, I believe that that's an issue that is much more important, that has absolutely gone on to ruin people's lives. I mean, that's actually screwed some people up by getting molested by a priest. Somebody who they were actually told was supposed to be a representative of God. And, certain things that they say in the Catholic Church. How the Pope and how the priest is supposed to be God's representative of Christ here on earth. But yet the representative of Christ here on earth is molesting you and hurting you. And I think that, instead of caring about some stupid little communion chalice, the Catholic Church needs to put its priorities towards where it should be put towards. And sometimes, even though I know anybody can be any kind of religion that they want to be, sometimes I don't understand. But I don't understand why a whole lot of black people are still Catholic. Because in the Catholic Church, with the Pope, especially back in the day, is the same church that helped to put black people into slavery. Some of you all might get that later. But this is what happened. So instead of caring about a communion chalice, no, the Catholic Church needs to deal with actually what it needs to be dealt with, and save all your passion for that. Save your anger for that, instead of going around and disrespecting a family. And, you know, I've talked about them whenever they're wrong, but I'll always talk about somebody whenever they're right. Kudos and thumbs up to the police department of that area who actually found that the family didn't do anything wrong. And because, you know, he did go and call the police, which is another thing I said in the last video, everybody needs to stop doing. Stop calling the police on everybody for every little thing. All over a communion chalice? Really? But kudos to the police for taking them to another church, and one police officer, I guess, knew a pastor and got in touch with the pastor, and this particular pastor, don't know who he was, actually held their mother's funeral in his church. So thumbs up to the police department for doing that. So, you know, the way I am, you know, I can talk about anybody when they're wrong, but yet I'll always try to congratulate you when you're right. So this is what the Catholic Church needs to do, is to focus on the boys who are being abused in the church, and were abused, and maybe some who even still are being abused. So that kind of segues into my other subject that I want to talk about, and what everybody has been talking about all over social media, and that is Pastor Brian Carn. Oh yeah, Pastor Brian Carn. For many of y'all who don't know, that he had a worship leader named Whitlow, Brother Whitlow, and I guess Whitlow was going out of town to go and bury one of his family members. And so Brian Carn encouraged him, well, yeah, go out of town, go take care of your family, go take care of your family. And while he is gone, Brian Carn, now this is alleged, all allegations, but Brian Carn allegedly goes to Whitlow's apartment and actually has sex with Whitlow's wife, and does it several times. This is a shame in the day and time that we live in, when people are going through all kinds of job problems, career problems, even marital problems, even family problems, but yet the safest place that we should have to fall with the church and pastors, when the same pastors who are supposed to be leading the flock are up here abusing and sleeping with the flock. This is a shame in this day and time. But yet, even though he did what he did, committing fornication and adultery with another man's wife, I cannot believe that you have other fellow pastors who are taking up for Pastor Carn. Like Matthew Stevenson went on a rant on Periscope, you know, talking about, like, you know, all of us who are on social media, all of us who are, you know, talking about this whole episode, talking about this whole issue are wrong. You all are wrong for talking about men and women of God and all of this other kind of stuff. I mean, why is it? I wish somebody would explain this to me. Why is it that whenever a pastor screws up, and they do something that they know is biblically wrong, why so many other pastors want to take up for it? I can't believe that even what happened in T.D. Jakes' church, you had other pastors and certain people taking up even for that. You know, one of my cousins who happens to belong to T.D. Jakes, I guess they belong to one of his satellite churches down there, was saying when Audrey Stevenson turned the camera on, oh, well, you know, she turned the camera on because she was trying to make the church look bad. You know, she turned the camera on, you know, just because she wanted to entrap them. Really? This kind of stuff in churches needs to stop. I mean, because if you look at it, people are all out there are already hurting. They're hurting out there. They're looking for answers. They're looking for solutions. They might have questions about themselves and about their life or whatever, and they come to a church and come to a pastor for a soft and a nice way to fall, but yet the same pastors are hurting them and abusing them, lying to them, coming up with all of these schemes and scams to take their money like Brian Carn has, because a whole lot of people, whenever it was a pastor who might have had a ministry that he thought was dying, they would bring in somebody like Brian Carn. And Brian Carn will call himself prophesying, reading off people's addresses and reading off people's social security numbers and all of this other kinds of stuff, and raising big offerings and everything. And he admitted that he one time got a prophecy from somebody who was a witch. This a particular psychic, I guess, that he wrote down what she said. Because this particular psychic a few years ago said in 2015 that pork products were going to be bad because God is going to do something bad to pigs. So watch your pork. And George P. Bush is going to come up politically. And George W. Bush is going to decline in health, and 2015 could be the year that he dies. That's going to be the year that God calls him home. But as you see, it's 2018 and George W. Bush is still living. So we know that that prophecy was untrue. We know that that prophecy was a lie. And what did they do to people even way back in the Old Testament who had a prophecy and the prophecy did not come to pass? They put that prophet or prophetess to death. That's what they did back in the Old Testament in the good old days. That's what needs to happen now. Especially when you have people like Brian Carn and other people like Matthew Stevenson taking up for Carn's bad behavior and the bad behavior of Juanita Bynum and the bad behavior of T.D. Jakes, bad behavior of Eddie Long. I mean, even when Eddie Long screwed up, I mean, you had people like Creflo Dollar talking about, well, you see, he's human, you see. He made a mistake. He had a wreck. He had a wreck. You can't blame him. You can't get upset with him because he had a wreck. Really? A wreck? You don't do something that you know is wrong several times over and over and over and over again, something that you willfully know that is not right according to the scriptures, and you want to have the nerve and the gall and audacity to want to call it having a wreck. Really? So all of you pastors who are taking up for the bad behavior of Brian Carn or some of these other ones who fail, and I don't believe that he's going to be the only one. I believe that we're living in a day in the time where a whole lot of these mega churches and big ministries are going to be exposed, because a whole lot of people look at mega churches like it's a big something that, just because a church is growing, God has his hands on it, which is not true, because a whole lot of these people who I feel that are leading mega churches are going to die and bust hell wide open. All of them. What do they do except lie to people about money and just be concerned in just the numbers and the amount of people who are filling the pews every single Sunday of their church? This needs to stop, where pastors are defending the bad behavior of another pastor. And I believe that the only reason how come some of these pastors are defending the behavior of Brian Carn and others is because they're doing things and they're hiding things themselves. Someone like Matthew Stevenson is hiding things himself, wearing skinny jeans, having long braided hair, walking around with tattoos, when this is, according to the scripture, is not something that a pastor is supposed to be doing. It it says in the book of Scripture, even in the book of Titus, what a pastor is supposed to be. A pastor is supposed to be sober-minded. A pastor is supposed to have self-control, not given to wine. It's supposed to be upright. It's supposed to be honest, not a brawler, not a striker, or anything like that. A husband of one wife and his children must be under subjection. That's what we believe in around here. So with that, that's where I'm going to leave it. If anybody liked this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see everybody in the next video. Peace and blessings to all.